How's everybody doing? Smoking cigars with Howlinblind, Howlinblind Muddy Slim. Today is January the 6th of the year 2010. And I hope everybody had a safe and happy New Year's Eve. Blues Town's gig at Jim Porter's opening up for Unknown Henson was turned out really, really good. I got to spend some time with Unknown backstage and talking to him, and he's just a super, super guy, hell of a nice guy. Tiny Basser, Bubba, the drummer, they are also now the box masters, is what I understand. Add another guitar player, Unknown's on guitar, Tiny on bass, Bubba on drums. Add Billy Bob Thornton out front, and you got the box masters. So it was a great time, folks. Great time. Smoking a cane. I just had my traditional Wednesday morning eggs and bacon. Look at that. That's the band. That's a cane. The white band indicates it's a Maduro cigar. This one is the 6x60, which, as I've mentioned before, is my new favorite size. And I hope everybody's doing all right. If you haven't had a chance to smoke one of these and you are a cigar smoker, you need to go out and find one. They're really, really good. Nice medium to strong flavor. Excellent cigars made by the Oliva family. There's a different story, I think, on the canes and how they're done and versus the regular line of Olivas. My last video of 2009, where I just did some recapping. There's so many things that I totally forgot to mention after I did the video. You know, the FDA taking over the regulation of tobacco and the fact that the FDA does not want you to die from tobacco. No, because they won't approve it. The FDA does not want you to die from tobacco. They want you to die from prescription drugs. And that's why they back up all those prescription drug commercials on TV that you see that can cure you, but may make you die later on. Welcome to the sarcastic views of Howlinblind Muddy Slim, folks. Today, what I want to talk about is taxes, income taxes, because April 15th is just right around the corner. And I've said this a kabillion times before, and I'll say it a kabillion times again about taxes. Just like in the previous video, Andy and Barney talks about taxes. Andy says, well, Barney, you can't take it with you. And Barney says, they keep nibbling at me like this, I won't be able to afford to go myself. There are a ton of great documentaries talking about taxes. There's a great, the history of taxes is there. And yes, the government imposed certain taxes at certain times to help pay for certain things. But those were tariffs on items coming into the country. You know, Abraham Lincoln wanted to get away from the British way of life, which was, tax everybody to death, because the British, now I'm not saying they are now, but I think there's still a little bit of that going on over there, where they think they're the blue bloods, they're the top bunch, excuse me, and everybody who lives and works under them are the peons, the peasants, the common folk. Fuck that. We're all human beings. God created us, every frickin' one of us, as equals. What you do with your life is up to you. Whether you make $1 million or whether you are lucky to make $20,000 a year and survive. But as long as you're happy. But Abraham Lincoln's idea to grow the country was to impose import tax, tariffs. Let's say you own a, I don't want to say television factory back in those days because they didn't have television back in those days, but let's say they made buggy whips or something like that, and you had your plant, you know, let's just say somewhere in the 50 states, in Indiana, because they didn't have 50 states back in those days. But let's say in Pennsylvania, you manufactured an item and you wanted to sell it. Well, one thing, you didn't have government regulations telling you that this thing has to meet certain standards and certain quotas and certain quality control. The guy who made the frickin' item made it the best he could, gave it the best quality he could, because his name was on the line. You know, it's just like Sony today makes great TVs. They're not going to put out a piece of shit because you get too many people buying Sony TVs that just don't last and they're pieces of shit. People are going to start saying, yeah, Sony products suck. And Sony ain't going to sell very many TVs. Well, they put their pride in the products that they made back in those days, and there were no extra business taxes on top of that, environmental taxes on top of all that, to raise the price of that buggy whip. Let's say it cost the company $50 to make, and they sold them for $100, or let's say they sold them for $75 wholesale, and the retail price was $150, but the retail store said, "But we're going to sell them for $100." They're still making money, or $125. They're still making money. And people got the great quality products. But let's say some company in Japan gets one of these buggy whips, and they say, you know, we want to try to corner the market. And they can make them for $10 a piece. How fair is it for them to import those into this country with no cost, to compete with the originator, and sell them for $90 a piece? That's why they put tariffs on items that came into the country. Okay, yeah, you can sell here. It's a free market. But you can sell here, but it's going to cost X amount of dollars to bring your items in. And that's how the country ran. That was the money they ran on. Those taxes, those tariffs. And at one time, this country had so much money in surplus. Plus, also, the government was printing American money. During Abraham Lincoln's day, that was the greenback. They were printing this money the way Congress is supposed to do it, the way the Constitution says Congress is supposed to print and coin money and regulate its value thereof. And they didn't print so much money that inflation was out of this world. In other words, a buggy whip, let's say, that cost $100, didn't, because of inflation, all of a sudden cost $2 about 5 years later. Pretty much back in those days, from what I understand, the value of things stayed pretty steady because there was no inflation. Inflation is a hidden tax that steals buying power from your dollar bill. You know, it still costs the same amount of money. It's still worth the same amount of money to make. Now, I'm at about 9 minutes, so let's take a break. I'll be right back, okay?